Good morning. Welcome to today's meeting of the Joint Assembly Ways and Means Senate Finance Subcommittees on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Senators Wynn. Here. Titus. Taylor. Present. Assembly members Anderson. Present. Brown May. Dickman. Here. Hibbets. Here. Muska. And Chair Watts.
I am here. Thank you. Please mark Assemblymember Brown May absent excused and Senator Titus present when she arrives. Thank you for everyone who's joining us today. We are going to be hearing 5 budget accounts from the Department of Motor Vehicles. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please be sure to silence your electronic devices. If you wish to provide public comment, which we'll have at the end of today's meeting, please do sign in at the table, provide a business card to our staff if you have one. Let's see, I think that about does it. We'll limit any public comments to 2 minutes. And as a reminder, everyone please state and spell your name for the record every time before you speak. Please make sure to turn on the mic before you start speaking and turn the mic off after you finish. So with that, we will dive right in. So we'll welcome the DMV. Good morning. Make yourself comfortable. As soon as you're ready, please begin.
Good morning, committee members. For the record, Angela Smith-Lamb, Deputy Director, DMV, SMITH-LAMB. Joining me at the table this morning is Bethany Musselman. She's the administrator of our Admin Services Division. There are also several members of our DMV leadership team in the audience here in Carson City and in Las Vegas that will present on their budgets. I will be presenting on budget account 4744 for the Director's Office. The Director's Office has 19 full-time employees, which include the Director, Deputy Director, Public Information Officers, and Information Security Officer, and Human Resource Personnel. The Director's Office is responsible for the general administration of the department. The Director's Office oversees 7 divisions of the department, has statutory authority to direct and supervise all administrative and technical activities of the department, and to adopt regulations as necessary for the operation of the department and the enforcement of laws administered by the department. The Director's Office coordinates the efforts of various divisions within the department to achieve its purpose through the establishment of policies, setting strategic goals and planning, and coordinating resources to optimize efficiency. Today, I'd like to highlight significant initiatives and decision units in this budget for your consideration. In several of DMV's budgets, you'll hear requests related to our proposed department-wide reorganization. As most of you know, we are undergoing significant transformation efforts with the DTE budget hearing slated for March, but the focus of these efforts is not just about modernizing technology. But we have to make significant business process improvements. As a reorganization allows us to align all customer-facing divisions through the same chain of command while maintaining program autonomy. Other benefits of reorganization allow us to meet demands of our technical challenges, to guarantee strategic approaches to business process, and align specific common activities into the organizations responsible for those activities. The major change in merging central services and field service division into a customer service division that is focused on services that the DMV delivers, such as credentials, vehicles, commercial licensing, that have customer-facing divisions report through the same chain of command while maintaining program autonomy. In addition, other changes have been made to align specific common activities into the organizations responsible for those activities. Making these changes allows us to be able to adapt and adjust more quickly to meet the demands of services we provide. The existing divisional structure is called out in statute, so DMV has submitted a BDR to rename the merged divisions, the Customer Services Division, and rename our Administrative Services Division Fiscal Operations Division. The main impact to reorganization in this budget is in Decision Unit E901, which requests the transfer of 2 existing internal auditor positions from Administrative Services Division, Budget Account 4745, to the Director's Office. Moving these positions under the Director's Office has been an ongoing recommendation to assure there is no conflict by auditing the division in their own chain of command, and allows efficiency as the auditors will have direct access to the Director. There are no anticipated changes in responsibilities for these positions, nor is there a net change in agency funding needs resulting from this transfer. Decision Unit E300 requests funds for a new Chief Data Officer position. DMV collects and distributes and houses information about every citizen in Nevada. Standards for data management and data quality need to be established to ensure data is secure, timely, available, complete, and accurate. The role of a Chief Data Officer will be to guide the DMV's data strategy, implementation, and operations, working collaboratively across the DMV with internal and external stakeholders to ensure the DMV's business operations and strategic decisions are data-driven. Decision Unit E304, this request for additional in-state travel for our human resource training throughout the department. Human resource outreach is critical to employee relations. HR staff currently has limited travel available for essential skill development. This enhancement will allow our HR staff to hold at least 2 supervisor-manager summits to foster the successful growth of our DMV supervisors and managers. Decision Unit E305 requests highway funds for a Management Analyst 2 position for DMV's Language Access Program. A permanent FTE will allow us to continue ongoing program efforts and maintenance of language access plan and strategy. This position would identify ongoing program needs, provide support to all DMV offices and partner entities, oversee and develop all reporting requirements, and provide training content and regular refresher training as it relates to language access initiatives. While this request was submitted as a Management Analyst 2, DHRM has reviewed the duties of the position and determined that the title of Program Officer 3 is a better fit. This change has no funding impact. Decision Unit E806. This enhancement is for the reclassification of our Equal Opportunity Officer to a Personnel Officer 2 to align with the duties of the position. This position is currently providing support to all DMV employees by assisting supervisors, managers with the employee relations issues and guiding them through disciplinary process, including assisting and participating in investigations. This position is also in charge of the department's Leave Without Pay program, which requires detailed research of an employee's leave activity and history to determine if the need for leave without pay is valid. This position also assists with coordinating most of the department's ADA accommodation requests and supports the team with employee FMLA requests and cases. Decision Unit E909, this requests a transfer of a Master ITP position from the Department Transformation Effort Budget 4716 to the Director's Office. This position oversees the overall network security posture and has been reporting to several members of the DMV executive leadership team. While collaboration with our project efforts and IT divisions is critical and will continue, we believe it's more appropriate for this position to report to the Director's Office. In addition, as we continue to grow our IT footprint, software inventory, and cloud presence, we believe this position becomes more critical. This position will need to collaborate with the requested Chief Data Officer to ensure the security initiatives are aligned with data governance. There are no anticipated changes in responsibilities for the position, nor is there a net change in agency funding needs as a result of this transfer. And that concludes my highlights for this budget.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director Smith-Lamb. We do have some questions. I believe we will start off with Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Let's talk a little bit about, you put the projections of the highway fund in here early for the 25 and then also for 27. Can you talk a little bit about the trends, right? The trends in that highway fund, and then also how were the projections developed? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Thank you.
For the record, Angela Smith Lamb, DMV Deputy Director. So our revenue projection, we've seen an uptick year over year. I believe it's roughly a 4.5% growth from FY25. We are anticipating continued growth and projected growth of a little over 2.5%. And that's based on, we look at every revenue source and look at the seasonality of some of the revenue sources to determine the growth, and it ended up equating or summing up to about 2.5% increase year over year.
Follow up, Chair. Thank you. Let me just follow up a little bit. So if you go back, I'm just trying to get, so the trend is about 4.5% up year over year for the past, 3, 4, 5, 2 years-ish?
For the record, Angela Smith Lamb, DMV, it's just 4.5% over the last calendar or fiscal year.
Can you give us a little trend data? Like, how has it been leading up to it? Just so we can see that the way that it's moving.
Bethany Musselman for the record. So our data, we do review the data year over year. There have been some significant changes that make it hard to come up with a flat, like a percentage overall with way highway funds have been changed throughout the years. So we are seeing continued growth. The average is about 4% specifically for highway fund over 24. We had about 2.48%. And so while the trend is slight growth continued, I can't give you like a flat percentage across the years because specifically in FY 24 we had a significant change. In FY 22 we had a significant change, so that changes your percentages. You have to take them out, and I'd have to go back and do some math on that for you.
Thank you, Ms. Musselman. I don't want to make you do that kind of math. I just wanted to know kind of where the data came from and how it informs your estimates for projections going forward. So thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Senator Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair Watts. I have a couple of questions. I don't even think it was last session. I think it was the session before that. There was a bill that raised that cap from the 22% to the 27%. I think it was to account for the large expenditure of that IT program that eventually someday, hopefully, we will get off of Cobalt. But it appears that the department is going above that 22% administrative cap again in fiscal year 27. So does the DMV have plans for enabling legislation to increase that cap again beyond the 26 fiscal year?
Thank you for the question, Senator Nguyen. Yes, for the record, Angela Smith Lamb, DMV, we have submitted a bill draft request to increase or extend the cap to 27% through FY27.
And it's just through FY27?
For the record, Angela Smith Lamb, for now, yes.
For now. Okay. May I follow up, Chair? What are the main operating issues facing the DMV, and how does the executive budget address those issues?
For the record, Angela Smith Lamb, main operating issues are just siloed operations, clunky, obviously, technology right now, which leads to fragmented business processes. And I will say, I think I've talked about this in some of my other presentations. The raises that we got last session really helped with us recruiting. We're looking at roughly a 5% vacancy rate right now, which has been tremendous from what we were averaging around 20%. But one of the challenges we still deal with today is while our vacancy rates are low, our turnover rate still remains somewhat high because we lose staffing consistently to other state agencies because they still are a little bit higher paid than our DMV operations staff. Hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on that. So first, on the point you just made, obviously there's a comp and class study and a plan to hopefully incorporate that moving forward. Have you reviewed that, and would that assist with some of the issues you're seeing of folks moving out of the DMV into other agencies?
Thank you for the question. Angela Smith Lamb, for the record. I haven't seen the entire class and comp study. They're still working on it, is my understanding. I have seen some of it and had conversations with staff with DHRM, and they are anticipating being able to resolve that. As you know, I mentioned the reorg, and part of that we're merging our big customer-facing divisions to customer services division is our goal. And my understanding is that there would be some sort of equivalent across the state customer care specialist positions that would put us at an equivalent level to some of the other agencies that typically take those positions.
Thank you for that, and I think this is something that's of interest to all of us. We want to try and address some of these issues, which I know have been ongoing and were brought up during the last biennium as well. So just please keep us apprised as you learn more about the details of that and how that would affect your agency. The other question I have is going back to the cap. I don't mean to necessarily put you on the spot, but I think it is something that we're interested in getting some deeper understanding on. Obviously, we're budgeting for the upcoming biennium, but we know that we've continued to move this cap out to help fund the IT modernization for the department, and we know that there, even after we get over kind of the main hurdle, there's going to be some continued expenses, and so I think, you mentioned through fiscal year 2027 for now. We know that that things change, but I think it would be, obviously we want to make sure that we're on a pathway to get back to getting as much highway fund into supporting our roadway infrastructure after we do the heavy lift on this IT infrastructure. So if you have any additional thoughts on kind of what the trend lines look like, for when those IT expenses start to taper down, and when can we really expect? So it sounds like there's going to be a bill to push it out 2 more fiscal years, but we might need to push it out a little bit more than that if we can start to get some understanding of when we're going to be able to get back to that historic 22% cap, or if we need to have a conversation about changing the cap to some other level above 22% on an ongoing basis. I think that would be helpful. So I guess more of a comment, but if you have any response.
Yes, thank you, Chair Watts. That's you're spot on. We have historically talked about the cap needing to be increased anyway. Inflation has plagued us like most agencies, so that hasn't helped our situation either. We've seen between 20 and 30% increases in inflation for all contracts, not just our DTE efforts, but I will say that our goal right now is to try to ramp down some of the expensive contract supports services that we are asking for in this particular budget, so that we can reduce our ask on the highway fund and hopefully return to something around the 22% cap after this biennium.
Thank you. So I look forward to continuing that conversation, and thanks for that additional information. I believe next we have a question from Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. Great to see you. And 2 questions. You talked about the reorganization, so if you could just talk more about the anticipated benefits, as well as what you will see in changes to customer service at the DMV.
Thank you for the question. For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. So our hope is by combining the customer-facing divisions that they're going to remove some of the silos and inconsistencies in information that's shared with the public and the way that they do business, which we anticipate will lead to some improved business processes, but also the touch points for the customer so that we don't have to continually defer them to another specialist within the department. By combining them, we'll work on a training program that allows them to help the customer once and done philosophy. In addition, in some of our for example, our fiscal operations, we have bad debt collections in our motor carrier division and in our administrative services division, which leads to inconsistency in how they're processing those type of transactions. So by consolidating those into one division, then we can work on business process improvement and less confusion for the customers that we serve.
Thank you. Next, I believe we have questions from Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you we've got a lot of questions for DMV. Can you kind of go through the process for the anticipated process for the cross-training of the back office and how this would enhance services? And then do you think that there might be a need for, I guess, more funding for that cross-training? Or do you think what you have currently is, I mean, everybody always wants more money, don't get me wrong. But do you think that what is currently anticipated is accurate?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Anderson. For the record, Angela Smith-Lamb, we have our field services division today has an amazing training program. It's a 6-week effort where when we first hire employees, they go through several weeks of in-classroom training and then do shadowing with staff for several weeks following that. And so we're anticipating transitioning our back office staff through that same training and then looking at the content. We have a great training team, so we'll look at the content and make sure that it's updated to include some of our back office stuff as well so that the front line can assist with that. So we don't think that we need additional funding for the training because we already have a really great training program that will just enhance.
Follow up, if I may? Go ahead. Thanks. So as I look through some of the things, I was a little bit surprised to see microfilm. I mean, not everybody loves a good microfilm and we'll put it through the fax as well. So just wondering why there appears to be still 7 microfilm operators that are necessary in this reorganization, and then just are there any other sort of teams that are going to be anticipated to be eliminated? The jobs, not the employees, but just the job titles.
For the record, Angela Smith, great question. Frankly, the microfilm operator titles, it's past its useful life. It's really scanning that these staff focus on, and so we did propose elimination of several of those positions. And as we modernize and do stuff more electronically, we envision that we won't need those as much, and we'll spread out continued scanning needs throughout the rest of the positions.
So just to clarify, if I may, it's the 7 that are currently there are needed. It just happens to be the wrong title. And then there's no other units that would be eliminated based upon this results of the reorg.
For the record, Angela Smith-Lamb, you are correct. We are the titles need to be changed, but my understanding is that will also be addressed for the class and comp study, and it would be more focused on scanning. I think we were hoping that through the class and comp study, they would just be customer care, and we'll reevaluate what they're actually doing. So it's, again, they're serving the public more greatly instead of just the scanning activity.
Thank you. Yes, I think something related to digitization is probably a little bit more accurate to today's needs. I did have one additional question around the reclassification of the 4 services technician positions to supervisor positions. Can you just discuss that? Because, obviously it's helping provide some upward mobility for those folks, but we're not increasing the number of technicians being supervised. So can you just kind of walk us through the rationale behind that a little bit more?
Thank you for the question, Chair Watts. For the record, Angela Smith, TMV. So you kind of touched on it with one of your earlier questions about back office staff. While we anticipate the largest impact will be resolved through the class and comp study, we wanted to make sure that when we merged the two divisions that we had equivalent leadership levels. So it was really to bring them and align them at the same level as the leadership in the field services division.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I believe next we have a question from Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the second run at this. I'm glad we're talking about people because this. I have a couple of questions, if you will allow. You're withdrawing your request to transfer the 18 positions, right, from the compliance. What's it called? The Compliance Enforcement Division. Can you talk a little bit about why?
For the record, Angela Smith, thank you for the question, Senator Taylor. Yeah, we evaluated that, and our initial hope was that because that subset of employees works with the commercial business customer, that we would merge them into motor carrier. However, there are some nuances wherein our compliance enforcement investigators do some sensitive background checks, and by separating them out, it might make the process for those actual businesses a little bit more clunky than we were hoping. So it may be something that we look at later down the road, but for now, we didn't want to disrupt or make the process worse. That's not our goal. Our goal is to improve services, and so we need to evaluate that more closely before we do that.
Okay, so it isn't related to the study, to the comp and class study. It's really nothing. Okay, and then in that same vein, thank you for the second question, Chair. You talked about how establishing the new unit, the new business unit, the motor carrier, would streamline customer service. Talk a little bit about that. How do you envision by creating this new unit? How are we going to serve people better?
For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. So again, same theory. Motor Carrier Division works heavily with our commercial and business customers, and so their needs are unique and not the same as an individual customer. So by combining them, a lot of times they're the same customer base, but they're having right now to deal with different divisions, and so you don't have the same strategic goals or focus. And so by combining those, we think it will improve services, and we can start thinking future state, how are we better serving that group of individuals and businesses?
Thank you. That makes sense. One-stop shop is certainly better than sending them two different places. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. And similar to what my colleague was asking, my question is around the 19 positions recommended for the call center and the back office processes. Just what current and future workload was considered when making that determination?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So the current workload, we do currently already have a call center. So their workload will remain relatively unchanged. However, with our modernization effort, the goal is to provide additional channels for the customer to reach out to us. And so that staff will be focused on continuing contact with the customer, not just through a call center, but also through web chats and email. They will be maintaining the chat for the website so that customers that can just type in their question and get automatic responses, those sorts of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe next we have Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you, Chair. And I actually have two questions that are a little bit unrelated, if that's okay. Okay, thanks. Good morning. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit how centralizing IT security staff in the director's office would enhance the department's IT security strategy.
Thank you for the question. For the record, Angela Smith Lamb. Right now, it's kind of siloed. It's spread out. So we have a our information security officer now that exists, and our footprint for IT and technology has grown exponentially with our project efforts, and so it's kind of fragmented, and they don't have direct access, and it's unclear for those personnel who their direct chain of command is. So by centralizing them, it gives them direct access to the director, who frankly should be the one getting information on any issues, concerns as it relates to security issues, mitigations, risks. So we think that it makes a lot more sense for them to be in the director's office.
Okay, thanks. And then also I was wondering about the functions of the mailroom team with this transition. As the transformation effort is implemented, won't it reduce the amount of physical mail?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Again, thank you for your question. There's a possibility that it could reduce the amount of mail, maybe through some digital submission of documents. However, there will always still be physical mail that needs to be handled. And then the mailroom staff also, the mailroom staff specifically being transferred to administrative services, also deals with incoming payments and things of that nature. So those services will still be needed. And so we don't anticipate not having a need for those positions.
Okay, so you still have a need.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you for bearing with us. I think most of our questions are in this account with the reorganization and everything. And we've got lots of amendments and technical adjustments and bills. So thanks for bearing with us. I believe our next question is from Senator Nguyen.
Oh, it's like Groundhog's Day. You were talking, we were talking about the reorganization, and you actually answered some of the questions that I think this committee had regarding some proposed amendments and other bills that are coming to kind of support that transition and that reorganization. But in looking at some of the budget accounts that are funded in part with cost allocation revenue from your fee-funded budget accounts, and some of that, I'm looking at the executive budget, and it doesn't appear to reflect any of the revisions to the DMV cost allocations based on this reorganization. Can you kind of explain why there are no changes to the various DMV cost allocations based on the recommended reorganization?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So the cost allocation is primarily calculated based on staff costs. And so while we are reorganizing and redistributing some staff, the fee-funded budget staff still will remain the same, and will still continue to report to the positions that they are currently reporting to. And so while those positions are moving from one budget to another budget, the actual allocation doesn't change.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess just to know, I think we're going to need to have you connect with our staff just to make sure that we understand all of that, and make sure, as you're looking potentially at some of those statutory changes too, we just need to make sure that all of that flows together, because I know we have some of those fees are dedicated to specific things and specific accounts. So if we're moving them over into the director's office, we just need to make sure that all works out. And it sounds like under what we saw in the budget, it was talking about a reduction in fee funds as those positions were moved over. But what it sounds like you're saying is that we won't have any decline in fee revenue, and at the end of the day, those positions are still going to be supported, whether it's through a cost allocation back into that budget account or some other modification. Correct?
Bethany Musselman for the record. That is correct. specifically, we are not transferring any positions that are currently in a fee-funded budget. So that would be budget accounts 4711, 4712, and 4731. Those are all fee-funded budgets within the Central Services Division. So those staff will remain in those budget accounts and just report to the combined Customer Services Division.
Great. So we'll just have our staff connect with you and make sure that we've got everything on the same page. Next, I believe we have a question from Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for being here. And I appreciate reorganization and rethinking processes that have gone on and on and on, as long as it relates to better customer service and doing good things for our Nevadans. And so my question relates to the new chief data position. Looking at what you've submitted for your information, it seems like if that's approved for the new chief data officer position, what's different about their duties than the current information security officer, the IT professional for? And so how does that really change or improve between those two positions, because they seem the same? And for me, I'm hearing a lot of additional staff in the back offices, but I want to make sure we have adequate staff in the front offices for customer service. So could you explain that chief data officer position? Thank you.
For the record, Angela Smith, Lamb, DMV. Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. There are a lot of overlap, and it is important for our security personnel to work with this position. But I would say the significant difference is the main focus is data, how we collect it, how we store it, how we disseminate it. Whether or not we are giving it to people who are eligible to receive it, to ensure that we have good data governance. Today, we get requests for data from all over the place. And so the fact that we get them through all of our divisions, it's very fragmented, and we need someone to put a good, solid strategy together based on best practices with security in mind, because that security officer can look at the data from at a different level and see if there's trends or issues with the data, how it's being provided, making sure that it's consistent, whereas our security officers look at the way that it's being transported, how it's being stored, if the environment that it's in, how it's being transported, if there's threats from in the software, security breaches. So they have to work hand in hand, but their focus is very different.
So what I'm hearing is that they will augment each other, not supplant each other.
For the record, Angela Smith, DMV, you're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And following up on that, can you also talk about, so there's we just discussed that transfer of the master IT professional position into the director's office as well. So can you talk about how that fits into the overall equation in terms of IT expertise and data expertise in the director's office under this proposed move?
For the record, Angela Smith, TMV. So I think I mentioned earlier that this position's already reporting to several different executive leadership because our footprint has grown. And we don't expect that footprint to shrink even as we move away from legacy. We expect it to grow exponentially because we'll be continually enhancing our systems and services we provide from a technical standpoint. And each time we make any change, enhancement, it has to be reevaluated for risk. And so putting that position in the director's office with our current security officer that was managing just our legacy environment gives us a lot more consistency. It creates a team of people focused on the security of DMV. We take that very, very seriously. Everybody's data's in there, and we don't want to risk a breach. And so we think it's critical for us to maintain this team and for them to work together.
Great, thank you for that. And I think it's just helpful for us to understand with, again, positions being moved and another position being created and a position already being there, to understand how that all interplays together. I think we all recognize the importance of data management and security within the agency. So, and then can you discuss, moving to the record search section. Can you talk about the cost allocation methodology to charge costs to that section, and how it was determined that allocating record search charge revenue for the chief data officer position is aligned with the work that they'll be doing?
Bethany Musselman for the record. So the with the reorganization, the record section will be moving under the proposed chief data officer. So they will be reporting through that line. And so while the chief data officer will be housed in budget account 4744, the director's office, their work will all be in support of DMV records and DMV data. And so we felt it was appropriate to fund that position with revenue from the DMV records section.
Thank you. And then just following up on that, why did you decide not to fund the position with highway funds?
For the record, Angela Smith Lamb, I think we just felt it was super appropriate to use the records fees. That fund was created for the dissemination of records and collection of data. So it made the most sense to fund it out of that subset of fees, besides the fact that highway fund is already in trouble. So there's that.
Yes, I think we are all very aware of that. Thank you for that. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to make sure I asked some questions about our language access plan, especially because the Sahara DMV is in my district. So I'd love to just get an update on how you are implementing your language access plan and how we're providing, how DMV staff is providing to services to customers who are limited English language proficient.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Mosca. For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. So we did get approval for funding to get a position. However, while we started the recruitment, through discussions, we determined that it would not be ideal to fill a position because we were uncertain whether or not this body would approve the request. So we did get funding for contract services and some equipment. So we bought Pocket Talks, and those are basically little translation devices, and those have been administered throughout our 18 offices statewide. So staff are currently using those now, and we're also using contract services that when we get calls or chats, that sort of thing, it can translate in real time. Any language that we receive through back office as well.
Thank you. That's great to hear. And is the position that you were talking about, is that the program officer position?
For the record, Angela Smith, Assemblymember Mosca, yes. We originally had requested as a management analyst 3, but through the 2. But through DHRM review, they determined that it was more appropriate to be a program officer 3. So yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And what duties would you see this program officer doing for an ongoing basis?
For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. So ongoing, they would be responsible for the reporting the different languages that we were serving the public for, identifying any new ways to serve the language, that program itself, and they would do training, work with our vendor partners too to see how we can facilitate that, and then maintain the language access program. They would also be doing our Title VI program in addition.
Thank you. We'll go to Assemblymember Anderson next.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand the answer. So you've got the pocket translators, which are wonderful from what I've heard from many others. But then does this officer who currently is the officer actually part of the base budget, or are they separate? That's one thing. But then does the officer actually take a look at the data of how much those pocket translators are used? Because it sounds like they're supposed to also do a report, but if it's a pocket translator, that's somebody that's in the front line, how are they going to know?
For the record, Angela Smith, DMV, great question, Assembly Member Anderson. The position is, we are required to report on the different languages, and so this position will create a program to collect that data so that we could report on it. So that would be a big part of it, and just setting a strategic plan and goals around maintaining and continuing to offer services under language access services.
And then for the funding, is that in the base budget, basically? Or is that going to be a how do you document the funding, I guess, since this is more of a money committee than a policy committee?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So we did submit a work program for FY25 to receive funding for the position. However, the way that the funding came in, it's not in the salaries category. So we will have to do another work program to move money into salaries in order to fill the position. And then it's a little bit unclear for me if the funding is in the base budget or is as a separate decision unit. So there is some uncertainty on whether or not the funding for the position will be continued once budgets have been approved. So once budgets have been approved and we know that we have the funding continued, then we will work to fill the position.
Thank you. So we'll just add that to the to-do list. So I think probably on that one, we probably need a lot of coordination with Governor's Finance Office, figuring out what changes might be needed to happen at the next IFC meeting, and as well as our staff, because it sounds like we've got a lot of moving pieces to get that ironed out, either potentially through IFC and or through some adjustments in how the budget's presented. So thank you for providing some of that additional background. Members, do we have any additional questions for the Director's Office budget account 4744? I think it was pretty thorough. And again, thank you for answering all those questions. We appreciate it. I think it provides some additional clarity. So with that, we are glad to move on to the next budget account. I think what we have on our agenda is Administrative Services Division, budget account 2014745.
Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Bethany Musselman, Administrator for Administrative Services Division. Budget account 4745. The Administrative Services Division is comprised of 48 FTEs. This division provides support services to the Director's Office and all divisions of the department to include fiscal accounting, budgeting, internal and external auditing, travel arrangements, warehousing, inventory control, mail services, purchasing, contracting, facilities management, telecommunication support, and revenue collection and distribution, and revenue recovery services. Today, I would like to highlight the following decision units affecting our division. Decision Unit E301 requests the addition of one Management Analyst 3 position in the DMV Contracts Unit. DMV contracts impact multiple areas, including state agencies. As population grows, the intricacy of contracts DMV is involved with grows exponentially, and contracts become more numerous and complex. A dedicated senior position is necessary to oversee the management of DMV's multifaceted contracts to circumvent risk, errors, missed deadlines, any potential financial loss, and/or noncompliance issues. The technology and software contracts require a high level of scrutiny. This higher level position can ensure that contract management is properly aligned to state protocols while mitigating risks and driving continuous improvements when needed. Decision Unit E900. This request is the companion of E900 in budget account 4717 and requests the transfer of the revenue unit from the motor carrier division to the administrative services division. This unit is comprised of one revenue officer 3, 4 revenue officer 2s, and 1 administrative assistant 2. The revenue unit from motor carrier will join the revenue recovery unit in administrative services, providing workflow efficiencies and consistent processes for all customers. If approved, this transfer will not result in a net change in agency funding. Decision Unit E901 is the companion of E901 in budget account 4744 for the transfer of our 2 internal auditor positions to the director's office as recommended. If approved, this transfer will not result in a net change in agency funding. Decision Unit E902 is the companion of E902 in budget account 4741 for the transfer of the central services mailroom staff comprised of 1 DMV services supervisor, 1 DMV services technician 2, 5 DMV services technician 1s, and 1 administrative assistant 1 to the administrative services division. This transfer will consolidate the mailroom teams currently split between central services and administrative services and allow for the teams to be consolidated into one group, allowing for consistent processes, cross-training of employees, and better workload management. The responsibilities of the teams will remain relatively changed aside from cross-training to allow for full coverage in the event of employee leave or vacancies. If approved, this transfer will not result in a net change in agency funding. And finally, merchant fees. Merchant fees are the largest expense in this budget account. Merchant fees expenses are offset with the collection of certain DMV fees, cost allocations from DMV fee-funded budgets, and with a highway fund revenue appropriation. DMV processes roughly 5.3 million financial transactions, and approximately 3.9 million of those transactions are paid with credit or debit cards. As the department encourages more and more online business, we will naturally see an increase in credit card transactions, resulting in a corresponding increase in merchant fees. In FY24, DMV paid an average of $6.17 per credit transaction and 47 cents per debit transaction. Accordingly, we are projecting approximately 11.3 million in FY26 and 11.9 million in FY27 for merchant fees. Thank you, and I will take any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. Also, I just want to say, it's other agencies, if you're watching. Just food for thought. So we'll start the questions with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you for the thoroughness. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. So I'm still kind of both. I feel like this area of the desk, we're all just thinking about the credit card fees of $6. Wow. So what factors did you consider when you were kind of thinking about determining that projected volume of credit and debit card transactions and $6, wow, and that in a resulting increase in the merchant fee cost?
Bethany Musselman, thank you for the question. So we track our merchant services activity quite thoroughly. And so as we are projecting costs for upcoming years, we look at the transactions that are completed year over year and what kind of growth trends we're seeing there to project out our counts. And then based on the averages that we're seeing, take the counts multiplied by the average to determine the cost.
Thank you. So as I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking about my world as a teacher right now, and the fact that I get to deal with many 16 to 18-year-olds who don't want to take the responsibility of learning how to drive because they like to be driven everywhere, it feels like. So why has the department kind of considered that there's going to be an increase instead of leveling it off when they're doing that projection?
Bethany Musselman, thank you for the question. So I think there's multiple factors that play into that. Population growth is obviously going to bring increase, and then really the key factor is as we have more activity online, then the only option they have is for electronic payment. And so as we are pulling customers out of the office that may have in the past paid with cash or check, as those services are moved online, they are forced to either pay with credit or debit card or e-check.
Thank you so much, because I was thinking of brand new drivers all the time, but it has to do with the process. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I believe next we have questions from Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I personally like the idea. You use the term it's a convenience fee, and it truly is, as we've moved back from going into, nobody wants to go to the DMV. Nobody wants to show up there. So the more stuff you can do online is important. Although, having said earlier, there are many folks, many of our constituents that still prefer going down, don't want to do this. But for me, I really believe it is a convenience fee. And we've had this discussion a long, long time about whether or not to charge over multiple sessions. And it's not just your agency, across the state's agencies. Former Assembly Member Carlton hammered on this in these committees about charging fees, and I approve of it. So having said that, though, can you elaborate a little bit more on how we got here for the service for a fee-based transaction model for customers, and what your decisions were to utilize credit cards and debit cards? And then I have a follow-up, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So we do have space in our merchant services contract to allow for service fees to be implemented on credit or debit card transactions. That would pass the cost on to the customer and relieve the cost from the state. There are multiple factors that need to go into that. However, primarily for us is the space within our system to allow for that change. And so our plan is, as we modernize and we are able to bring transactions into the future state system, then we can begin implementing that service fee structure. And once we are at that point, then we need to make the determination on whether or not to charge it right away or wait until all services are brought into the future state model, so that customers are not charged differently depending on which system that they are using.
Yeah, thank you for that. Great points. Again, there's a cost of individuals' time. Cost of gas just to drive to the DMV was well worth that small fee, as far as I'm concerned. What is your anticipated timeline for transitioning to a service fee-based transaction model, and why are the changes related to the transaction actually not reflected in the governor's budget?
Thank you for the question, Bethany Musselman for the record. So our hope is to have all vehicle services in the future state system by the end of this biennium, or this upcoming biennium, I should say. And so once we have those transactions online and fees and payments fully enabled, then we can look at implementing service fees for those transactions.
And then the follow-up question was regarding, we're not seeing this actually in the governor's recommended budget, and where's the
service
disconnect?
fees themselves?
Correct.
Okay, yes. So, sorry, Bethany Musselman for the record. So the service fee is not something that DMV will be collecting. The way that it works with the contract is the merchant services provider, which is currently Wells Fargo, would collect that on their end. So we pass our transactions through their payment gateway, is what it's called. And so that gateway would have a charge for the DMV services and then a separate charge for the service fee that Wells Fargo will retain and not pass on to DMV. So those will not be included in the budget. And we determined to not reduce our request for the full amount of expected expenses, because we don't right now have an accurate projection on what that reduction could possibly look like.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the questions.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we will go to Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to follow up. This whole fee thing is kind of interesting, right? So I'd like to follow up on my colleagues' kind of questioning around that a little bit. What kind of impact do you anticipate the fees are going to have? You know, we're all used to paying fees when we use it. What kind of fees are we talking about? What kind of impact do you expect it to be on the customers, on the citizens?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So currently, the rate that we have been quoted from Wells Fargo is a 1.95% charge. So it's based on the total of their transaction. Our current average vehicle registration is $259, which would result in approximately $5.05 as the service fee.
Thank you. Follow-up, Chair, if I may. Thank you. I forgot to do that by percentages, so that certainly makes sense. So that's how we expect it to impact the customer or the citizens. What kind of impact do you anticipate it having on the budget? Because now the fees aren't coming, right? I know we don't know what that is yet, but now the fees aren't coming. It's the public is paying it. So how should that impact this budget?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. Ideally, it will, once the service fees are implemented, it will result in a reduction of merchant fee expenses in our budget. So the costs that we are currently paying for merchant services will reduce once service fees are implemented.
One more follow-up, if I may. How much? Remind me what's in the budget for that expense at this point
so
now?
currently we are requesting $11.3 million for FY26 and $11.9 million for FY27. And so once service fees are fully implemented, and that means across the board every transaction is paying a service fee, then those costs will be almost eliminated. There will still be a few, likely a few $100s at least, for services that are not covered by service fees. But we won't see that full reduction until we are able to implement service fees across the board.
Needing less money is music to our ears. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and yes, thank you for finding ways to help out our ailing highway fund. I think, you mentioned that we're still trying to figure out exactly what that'll look like. Obviously, we need to get some sort of estimate so that we can kind of figure out how to incorporate that into the budget. So just continue to work with that, connect with our staff, and hopefully we can figure out what that phase in might look like when we get to budget closing. So with that, I believe we have a question from Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to Decision Unit E301, the management analyst position that you discussed during your presentation, and just get a little more detail. How would the new management analyst position improve issues the department is currently facing in managing contracts?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So currently our contracts unit is really just one position, a Program Officer 2 position that receives supervision and support from the Management Analyst 4 of our division. And the complexity and amount of contracts has reached a point where it is the workload is unmanageable for one person. And so by adding a position and a higher level position is going to result in being able to balance that workload more efficiently so that we can make sure that we are meeting deadlines and staying in compliance, while also providing knowledge and expertise for the more complex contracts that come about naturally as we modernize technology and services.
Follow-up, Chair? Go ahead. Thank you. And how would the duties and responsibilities of the existing program officer and management analyst who work on contracts change if this new position is added?
Bethany Musselman, thank you Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So the duties of the management analyst 4 will remain unchanged. That position will continue to provide supervision and support, but contracts is not their main responsibility. And so the duties of the current program officer will also remain unchanged. They will continue to focus on contracts and leases. That position then can focus on the more the simpler contracts, and then ensuring compliance with insurance and business licensing requirements, and some more administrative sort of tasks, while the new position can focus on the complex contracts and coordinating requests for proposals and things of that nature.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question back on the credit card or the fees that will be passed on to the customers. Would it be the same whether you're using a credit card, a debit card, or an e-check? Because usually debit card fees are lower. And like, for example, NV Energy, if you use an e-check, there's no fee. So would it all be the same or different?
Bethany Musselman for the record, thank you for the question. So the fees would be the same for credit or debit. However, e-check would be a no-fee option. We are required to provide a method of payment that does not come with an additional cost for the customer. So customers that don't want to pay the service fee are able to then pay by e-check.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions for the department on this budget account? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We're going to go on to maybe my favorite budget account, the Motor Vehicle Pollution Control account, budget 101-4722.
Good morning, Chair Watts, committee members. For the record, my name is J.D. Decker, Administrator of the Compliance Enforcement Division, which includes the Emission Control Program and Emissions Enforcement section, which is under budget account 4722. BA 4722 doesn't often get called for a hearing, so I hope the chair will indulge me a brief description. In accordance with federal and state air quality standards, the emission control section regulates and monitors motor vehicle emissions programs, and emissions testing licensees, such as smog stations and inspectors. A program staff of 27 employees are focused on emissions equipment testing, emissions programs, field sampling, and our smog spotter tip line, as well as running the public-facing Sahara and Reno DMV emission labs and associated training centers. The emissions enforcement section includes 11 police officers who focus on violations of emission standards, emissions evaders, heavy-duty diesel emissions, and emission station compliance. The section is also responsible for the pollution control account, comprised of emissions testing fees. This account is the account which distributes state air quality funds to Clark and Washoe counties, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, NDEP, and the Department of Agriculture. I would like to highlight the following decision unit in the section submitted budget. E306. This decision unit is a companion to an emissions fee BDR, which would increase the fee for diesel and gasoline emission certificates from $6 to $7. This is necessary due to increased expenditures in the pollution control budget, a gradual decrease of gasoline and diesel fueled vehicles on the road, and the 2023 extension of the time required for new vehicles to obtain their first emission certificates. The decision unit adjusts the distribution of pollution control fees to environmental programs throughout the various state agencies that rely on the funding, and also ensures that the budget account maintains its $1 million reserve pursuant to NRS 445B.830 sub 6. Without the increase in fee revenue, allocations to these outside agencies will have to be reduced or eliminated in order to balance the budget. That concludes the list of decision units. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Decker. I appreciate it. I think I've mentioned before that We know that this is an issue. This fee has not been increased in quite some time, so it's really been eroded by inflation. I had a proposal to address this, I think, 4 years ago, but ultimately we were not able to get enough support to get it through. So I'm glad to see that the governor's recommended budget has recognized the importance of addressing this issue. Can you discuss briefly how the department determined the increase to be $1 additional, and particularly how do you see that $1 increase being able to sustain this budget and its needs after this biennium?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So the department reviewed the expenses and the distributions to other state agencies that have historically been maintained and are set forth by statute. And in order to, just really evaluated what was the lowest amount of increase we could do in order to maintain those distributions as they have been historically. And a $1 increase was sufficient. And so that's what we went with. I don't know that it will be sufficient over time, so it could require an additional increase down the road. We could also look at language to set a cap rather than a set amount so that we could adjust that as needed without further legislation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was actually going to be one of my follow-up questions, and we've seen some proposals with other agencies of having some of that, putting some guardrails in place, but providing some flexibility so that you don't always have to come back to the legislature and run a bill in order to adjust some of these things. So I think you mostly addressed this, but I just want to kind of get clear because you mentioned, or Mr. Decker mentioned, the additional year that new vehicles do not have to get a smog check. We've got increasing use of electric vehicles in particular that do not have to get a smog check at all. And so it sounds like you feel that this $1 will get us through the biennium, but some of those other factors could potentially continue to erode the funding coming into this account in the future. Correct?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Yes, that is correct. We will see as we continue down the road how those trends will continue. Currently, we are seeing slight growth in emission fees. It's just not to an amount that is enough to continue full funding of this budget.
Thank you for that. And then, can you discuss how the transfer amounts that were reflected in the executive budgets were determined if the fee increase is not approved for these other agencies?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. So the distribution of the fees is set by statute. So there is a pecking order laid out in statute. So once DMV's operating budget is fully funded, then we go down the line. And so with the shortfall in revenue, we are unable to fully fund the last two items in that pecking order, which is the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and, environmental protection. And so TRPA's funding had to be completely cut, and we were able to continue half of the funding for environmental protection.
Thank you for that. And then I know there's also kind of some spillover that goes to the counties, and I think there was a little bit of reduction in that as well based on those projected shortfalls. And so you said the pecking order kind of starts with the department, and so that's why we did not see reductions to that because it's kind of at the top of that pecking order or waterfall.
Bethany Musselman for the record. That is correct. This budget is not, we're not doing anything crazy with it. The expenses are all as low as we can get them. And so once we were fully funded, then we are able to take what is left over and pass that on down the line.
Thank you. I believe we have a question from Senator Nguyen.
I feel like I'm kind of jumping around, so bear with me while I think out loud. When we're talking about, I'm assuming you're going to need a bill draft request, or you will have a bill draft request regarding this $1 per certificate transfer amount. But I'm wondering why it doesn't sound like you're recommending an update to the distribution of the certificate fee revenue by providing, I think it's 1/17 or 1/7 of the certificate revenue to Clark County and Washoe County, which would maintain that $1 per certificate transfer amount. I think I got those numbers right. 17 cents on every dollar. There we go.
Bethany Musselman for the record. I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of the question.
How come it's not included in your bill draft request,
Oh,
recommending an update to those?
So we did submit a bill draft request, and that was only to increase the fee. We did not look at changing the distribution, which is currently set at 1/6 the cost of the certificate. Right now, that equals $1 because it's $6 per certificate. With the cost increase, that would increase slightly to $1.17, something like that. We didn't evaluate the change in that distribution because we didn't feel it was necessary. If our costs are increasing, I can't imagine that the county costs are not increasing. So they need that revenue. And if we did go back and look just recently on what the impact would be if we changed it to 1/7 instead of 1/6. And really, they're getting the funds either quarterly or at the end of the year.
Okay.
So it doesn't really have an impact whether we change it or not.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, I think that provides some helpful clarity because, again, at the end of that waterfall, the money flows to the counties. But it sounds like that there's some timing differences, but the result essentially would be the same. And so what this proposed change does is gets us back to a level where we can maintain the funding for the department's activities, the transfers to the other agencies as outlined in statute, and then there will be some additional funds flowing to the counties to address their needs as well.
Bethany Musselman for the record. Yes, that is the expected result.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions on this budget account? Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. So with the explanation, it sounds like there's a maximum amount that can be used. I think it's, looking at this, it has to do with the statutory maximum mandated amount is $1 million. It sounds like. What happens when it goes over that? Does that revert to the county? Does it stay with the agency? What happens if it does go over that amount?
Bethany Musselman for the record. Thank you for the question. That's actually the amount that would get sent to the counties at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, if we have over $1 million in reserve, the amount over the million is distributed to currently Clark and Washoe County based on the number of certificates issued for that county.
I had not been tracking that, so thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that. We will move on to budget account 201-4735, Field Services.
Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Renato Lara, Deputy Administrator for Field Services Division, budget account 4735. The Field Services Division is comprised of 743 FTEs of which 560 are authorized to perform transactions at customer service windows located at 18 offices statewide. The Field Services Division is responsible for direct customer service operations for driver's licensing, vehicle registration functions. Self-service kiosks are available in 9 office locations: Carson City, South Reno, Elko, Fallon, Decatur, Donovan Commercial Driver's License Office, Henderson, Sahara, and West Flamingo. Today, I would like to highlight the following decision units affecting our division. Decision Unit E225. This decision unit requests to eliminate the 9 microfilm operator positions that were transferred in from Central Services as part of the regionalization effort, stated as one of the DMV transformation effort takes place. There is less and less paper involved in the day-to-day operations. There is less need for microfilm operators whose only job is to process documents. As we look to the future, these positions would not be needed, and the job duties can be absorbed by other positions. Decision Unit E805. This request reclassifies 5 DMV services technicians, 4 positions to DMV services supervisor positions to better align with the duties of the positions as part of the reorganization effort. Currently, Field Services has Manager 3s overseeing multiple staff and supervisors. With budget 4741 Central Services and 4735 are to merge, a DMV Manager 3 will be needed to oversee all departments and better align with the current organization structure of 4735. This manager will oversee an additional 40 employees they are currently not overseeing and would need to understand more complex DMV policies and procedures. The reclass of this 6 current DMV Tech Force to DMV supervisors better aligns with the current organizational structure of Field Services. This would help eliminate silos and better align with the DMV transformation effort. Decision Unit E806. This decision will request reclassification of 2 Program Officer 1 positions to Program Officer 3 positions to better align with the duties of the positions and aligns with Department of Motor Vehicles transformation, as these positions will be a resource or subject matter expert for the department transformation effort. The commercial driver's license third-party program has grown and changed over the years with implementation such as the FMCA Commercial Learner Permit, CLP. Final rule, 2005 test version, the entry-level training ELT, and the 2022 CDL test modernization initiative, which all have resulted in increasing the duties and responsibilities of the third-party program officer PO1 positions, including the development and execution of new training. These positions have been assigned responsibility in making program recommendations, decisions with a degree of authority and independence not typical with other positions in this class. Just bear with me. Thank you. For the record, Renato Lara. Decision Unit 901. This request transfers out 6 DMV service technician positions from Field Services Budget Account 4735 to the Motor Carrier Division Budget Account 4717 as part of the reorganization effort. The department is realigning business processes and operational flow to include fleet services, registration services, short-term lesser and long-term lessors under Budget Account 4717. This request aligns with the DMV reorganizational effort to create a business unit that encompasses all business transactions conducted in Budget Account 4717. Decision Unit E903. This request transfers 103 positions consisting of 3 administrative assistant positions, 1 division administrator position, 4 DMV Services Manager positions, 3 DMV Service Supervisor positions, 75 Services Technician positions, 1 Management Analyst position, and 16 microfilm operator positions from Central Services Budget Account 4741 to the Field Services Division, Budget Account 4735. As part of the reorganization effort, some of the challenges that exist today is Budget Account 4741 is very silo. This request will better align all positions. The intent for the 103 position is to have an overall knowledge of all services and products. This will better assist customers and allows for a consolidation of these teams, providing workflow efficiencies, consistencies, processes for all customers. This request has a net neutral fiscal impact. And with that, I will open up for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. So, I believe first we have Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this, as well as being the face for our Nevadans when it comes to the DMV. And so I was looking at the numbers and would love if you could share what factors are contributing to the reduced number of customers served at the 6 major DMV field offices.
For the record, Renato Lara, we do have a lot of online services as that can customers can utilize to not be in the office. With the new queuing system that we have also does allow for customers to also cancel their appointments. I can potentially reopen them also. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. So it would be, that makes sense that people are doing their transactions online. Can you talk about what, so changing appointments, what other types of things are now online?
So we, as part of our modernization ongoing project, we do have what we call it our rapid registration that's online also, and we also just did launch our TurboTax in one of the offices as a pilot, just to kind of get the taste out there for our customers to see that they can do their titles and registrations online, including private party now too, not just the dealer transactions.
If I may, Angela Smith for the record, DMV. We also already have a registration renewal online. You can also renew your driver's license online at least one time. You can do address changes, do some moving permits. We can get you a complete list.
Thank you. And my last question then is, that's great, so thank you for sharing that and sharing that with the committee. But we know too, when folks come in, walk-in customers, what are we doing to manage and reduce their wait times?
Renato Lara for the record, DMV. So we do offer a modified walk-in day on a Wednesday. So what that does do is we open up it's pretty much like a last-minute appointment, right? So if you need to come in on a Wednesday, we do open our queue to allow individuals to set up appointments for the following day, and that's usually opens up at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. So that is one of the ways that we do allow a lot of our walk-in customers to have that option still to come in. And then so that does help quite a bit for those last-minute customers that need appointments.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, may I start with a quick comment? Go ahead. So last quarter of 2024, I had to go into one of your DMVs for a transaction that I was not able to do online, which was fine. And I just wanted to compliment the gentleman that assisted me. He was excellent, very helpful, and I appreciated it very much. And I unfortunately cannot remember his name off the top of my head. But just so you know, I was very happy with him. However, that leads into my question. What factors have contributed to the increase in wait times for people with appointments, like myself, now ranging between 40 and 45 minutes in recent months, while averaging 19 minutes in 2023?
For the record, Renato Lara, DMV. There's multiple factors that do have increased some of our appointments. So we're in the process of learning our monetization aspect of it also. So we do have additional appointments that we do allow for our rapid and turbo products that we currently have with our monetization project. We do allow ADA walk-ins also, so that does, we do want to make sure that we get those individuals in, especially if they need their placards and so on. So that is something that we're actively looking on our end, and I can definitely give more information to you. I don't have that on top of my head as to what other factors may lead to that.
Chair, if I might. For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. So I'll say that we did transition our appointment system from a queuing system to the current Waitwell system, and the tracking and capabilities of the trends have changed substantially. So I think we have a better thumb on what kind of trends and data that helps us make better decisions and improvements to services. What I will say is I think the 19 minutes that you're referring to may have been the time it takes to actually serve somebody once they're at the counter, not the full amount of time they were waiting in office, because I don't believe that's changed substantially.
Your new queuing system, I'm looking at a table. And since May of 24 through December, it looks like the average wait time increased by 10 minutes. So is this new queuing system actually improving customer service, or are there other factors at play here?
For the record, Angela Smith, Lamb, DMV. So it does open up more appointments same day, because now we have some new capabilities with this system, where before we had a crazy no-show rate of, I think, 40 or 50%, and we didn't know that the customer wasn't going to show. So with this new system, they can text and cancel their appointment. So Renata referred to that. That opens up appointments same day, next week, and most of our offices, what I'll say substantially improved is that we went from 90 days out to get an appointment to somewhere around 13 to 14 days. So I think it's a massive improvement.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I am just applaud the focus on customer service, getting people in and out and all of that, right? So I know you're creating a new customer services division, and you transferred some folks over, and everyone's going to be cross-trained, right? In that, so does that mean that people who are right now, who are behind the scenes folks, are now going to have to, or going to get to, right, work face to face with people? And if so, what kind of training are they getting for that?
For the record, Renato Lara, DMV. So yes, that is correct. So they will have the opportunity to also, meet with the public and process transactions. With Director Smith, what she iterated, we do have a really great training team. So we will be utilizing the training team to go through the training that we currently have for the field services divisions that would encompass all services that we do. So field services and central services do a lot of the same functions. It's just that, one mainly focus on the back end of it, where field services is more of the front side of it. So there's not going to be a big lift on the training aspect of it. It's more trying to, again, we're introducing some of these individuals that normally probably wouldn't have the interactions face-to-face. That's going to be one of the biggest possibly biggest challenges for them. But like I said, we do have a really good training unit that will be able to assist with that and provide customer service training as well.
Follow-up, Chair, if I may. I thought you were going to jump in because you were jumping in, so that's why I looked. No, you don't have to. Nope, you don't have to, Deputy Director. So you're looking now at the transfer of central services staff, and like I said, into this customer service and so on. How do you anticipate is going to increase the efficiency and really decrease those wait times?
Renato Lara, for the record, it will allow us to, again, be more streamlining the processes, where now everything will filter through one division. Everybody's going to be getting the same information. So with that being said, I do feel that that will eliminate a lot of the return visits to the DMVs just because everybody would be getting the same information. Potentially, there's also going to be in the Carson City DMV where if we're lack of resources, people call in sick or on vacation, we can tap into the back office individuals, just kind of the previous statement, they will be able to come out and assist that office. So the only difference on that is the bulk of central services is at the Carson City office, so.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you so much for the answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the department for some of the additional information that's been provided to us to help us understand where things are going in terms of customer volumes in offices, the wait times for walk-ins, the wait times for appointments. I don't think this is something that we need right now, but one thing that might be interesting based on the questions that were asked to help put things in context is also understanding the counts or the volume of transactions that are moving online as more of those services are being rolled out. And I think it'd also be helpful for us to know, to my colleague's question, the amount of time that people are waiting to get an appointment, how long you're looking at having to plan out if you go in. If I wanted to go get an appointment right now, is it 2 months that we're waiting or whatever that is? I think that would be helpful. But I do want to echo the congratulations on where things are going. I think between being able to move more transactions online and having the appointment system, I know it can sometimes be frustrating to have to wait a while, but the last time I had a transaction, probably a year or two ago, I went in and it was very refreshing to go in and not be sitting around for hours, but to go in, sign in, and then my number was called, got the transaction taken care of. So we look forward to seeing the continued progress on that. So we will go on. I believe we do have one more question from Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. I'd echo those communications. Your division has always been so good at helping constituents and being so responsive to this. I love to see the decreased vacancy rates. I think you're one of the lowest now. And in a short 2-year period, you went from one of the highest to one of the lowest. So I think that is indicative and demonstrates the good work that you guys have been doing to streamline the process to make it a better customer service, friendly, customer-facing agency. So thank you for all that. With that being said, I know that we also, in the last legislative session, approved a big capital improvement project with that, the new Silverado Ranch facility. And I was wondering if you could talk about some of the transition plans into moving into that new building. I think you're moving from 2 other locations into that location. What that transition plan is looking like, what kind of disruption it might be temporarily for customers in getting to that new location once it is up and running and fully running, and how you see this new building improving the ability to serve customers. Lots of things in there. I should probably learn to simplify questions.
For the record, Angela Smith, Lamb, DMV. So yes, we're very excited about the new structure. One of the significant challenges we've faced at the current Henderson location is it just you can't remodel the problems that exist to serve the public there. Parking being a substantial issue. People circle constantly or legally park, their vehicles get towed. Our employees can't leave for a break or lunch or anything and be able to come back and park. So, and just the shape, the lobby, it doesn't meet the needs of the growing population in that area. And the Donovan location is in the same condition. It needs major renovations. It's not ADA compliant. And so moving those 2 locations into this this new office off of Silverado Ranch will give us space to grow and accommodate all of the customers in those areas. So as far as transition plans, we're in early stages of doing that. We do anticipate that we might need, a closure, but we'll plan early to make sure that we block appointments for those days so it doesn't have a substantial impact. And where we can, we'll make sure to open up or try to accommodate more appointments at our other locations in the interim. But those are plans that we still have to coordinate with the governor's office. And I'm not sure if I missed any of your questions.
No, that covered it a lot. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Members, any other questions on this budget account? We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you very much for that presentation. We will go on to our last budget account for the day, budget 201-4717, the Motor Carrier Division.
Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Karen Stoll, Administrator of Motor Carrier Division, Budget Account 4717. Motor Carrier Division is comprised of 50 full-time employees. This division is responsible for ensuring compliance with Nevada's fuel tax laws by special fuel and motor fuel suppliers and motor carriers in order to collect and distribute the maximum amount of fuel tax revenue due Nevada. Additionally, the Motor Carrier Division is responsible for licensing all commercial vehicles over 26,000 pounds, licensing all vehicles with apportioned registrations, conducting audits of motor carriers and fuel suppliers, and complying with the International Registration Plan, the IRP, and the International Fuel Tax Agreement, the IFTA. Today, I would like to highlight the following decision units affecting our division. E300 requests funding for an additional auditor position. Our Motor Carrier Division is a member of the International Fuel Tax Agreement involved with the reallocation of fuel taxes received by jurisdictions and owed to other jurisdictions based on road miles traveled by licensees. As a member, we are mandated to perform audits on 3% of the accounts registered in Nevada each year. The number of licensed IFTA carriers in Nevada has consistently increased, most recently by 2.74% from 2023 to 2024. We have seen the largest increase in carriers from California that have transitioned to Nevada due to California law changes impacting businesses. An additional auditor position will help maintain compliance in the number of audits we perform. Number E900, this decision unit is to transfer out Motor Carrier Division revenue recovery positions to the DMV's Administrative Services Revenue Division to consolidate collection efforts with their revenue recovery unit on delinquent receivables for the entire DMV. E901, this decision unit is to transfer 6 positions from Field Services, Budget Account 4735, to Motor Carrier. The department is realigning business processes and operation flow to include fleet services, registration services for fleet accounts, short-term lessor, and long-term lessors under Budget Account 4717. This request aligns with the DMV reorganization effort to create a commercial business unit that encompasses most business transactions conducted into Budget Account 4717. Physical locations of the positions will not be changed. E902, we submitted a budget amendment withdrawal. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to respond to questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I believe we do have some questions from Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward the information. My questions all have to do with the that fuel tax agreement. It appears that the need for an audit what factors are contributing to that, to the possibility that we will not be able to pass that audit?
Okay, so for the last couple.
Don't forget to
Excuse me.
say your name.
Excuse me, thank you. Karen Stoll, for the record. For the last couple of years, we have had people retire that are on the audit team, and we've had some vacancies in the audit unit. So we now have hired and we're fully staffed. But it takes time for training these auditors for both the registration, which is the International Registration Plan, and the fuel tax, which is the IFTA. And typically, most of our licensees are licensed with both. So they're doing interstate travel through provinces and states in the United States. So we have not been able to meet the percentage of mandated audits because we have one seasoned IFTA IRP auditor, and right now that person is not only training the new staff, which we're very thankful for, but then she's our main person producing the audits. So it's created a situation where we will not be in compliance with any review that the peer groups have coming up.
Follow-up, if I may? With that non-compliance, is there a possibility of, with the new hires as well, is there a possibility that that they will take that in consideration and we'll have like an extension, or will we be dinged with some possibility of some loss of revenue?
For the record, Karen Stoll, Motor Carrier Division. So with the number of increased accounts that I mentioned, we have, we'll be able to explain that, and there is a due process. So if they criticize us or they come up with a finding in their audit of our operation, we will be given time to respond, and we will be given time to say, here's our game plan going forward. And our game plan is we're going to train new people. We're going to restructure some of the priorities for our other side of that team that does fuel supplier audits, which are very, very important. We don't want to get behind on those either. But we will make sure that the committees at IFTA and RP know what we're doing to fix the problem. And the other part of your question said, is there repercussions? So both of these plans have remedies, and they talk about what they can do to us if we are not in compliance. And that can include loss of voting rights. It can include sanctions, fines. It can include other jurisdictions through the clearinghouse. They might withhold our money, which is huge. So we definitely do not want that to happen to us.
I agree. I'm so sorry, Chair, that I've got one more. Thank you. So the voting rights in that pact is what is a possibility, the possibility of all of these things. So how does the department ensure that with one additional person, in addition to the people that you're training right now, getting one more auditor, how do we, I guess, ensure that it's going to do what we need it to do? And then also, how would that impact the ratios if we've got 3 auditors now? Or like what would the basically that workload be and the processing timeline necessary?
For the record, Karen Stoll, thank you for that question. So currently, it's all about the supervisors monitoring the monthly production. Our work performance standards for each employee say, here's the number of audits you need to do to meet, meet standards or exceed standards. And that's all part of monitoring that employee. It's all part of making sure the accounts are getting audited, making sure that we have a plan, and every year we set forth an audit plan. Here's the list of accounts that we have randomly selected to audit, and it says this is what we need to do 3%, and then we divide the accounts up, and we're constantly getting reports. Here's where we're at. Here's here's how many we need to do. If we need more assistance, then we say to the director's office, I don't think we're going to make our numbers. Is there any other way we can get temporary help? That has all been something that has been offered by the director's office, and if we have to, we'll do that.
Thank you, and this feels like a larger thing than what we're doing, so thank you so much for taking it over, and thank you, Chair, for that much time.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions on this budget account? Okay, thank you very much. Again, we appreciate your time helping walk us through those budgets and answering all of our questions. That brings us to the end of our budget hearings today. And the last item on our agenda is public comment. If you would like to provide public comment by phone, please call 888-475-4499. When prompted, provide the meeting ID 818-2723-7044 and then press pound. So with that, we are going to open it up for public comment. If anyone would like to provide comments here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, please come forward. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm not used to doing speaking during public comment. I'll be very brief. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association. I would not be doing my duty if I didn't come to the committee and give a shout out to DMV. We're probably their largest customer, and since a big theme of today's budget hearings, we're customer service. They're doing a stellar job of implementing in the process of modernizing all of their various systems, but specifically, one thing I think the committee would like to hear about is they've instituted an e-titling provision, which is making the process for our members significantly easier. It's quicker. The deals are funded for the lenders faster, and I just checked the data. Last month, we did about 7,000 transactions through the new e-titling portal, which is pretty good considering it's been live for about 3 months after we did an extensive pilot program. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I know that you want to get out of here, so I'm going to shut my trap, but just want to put it on the record, thanks to DMV, the leadership, save and accept Mr. Sever. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Paul Enos. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Trucking Association. I'd like to echo the comments of Mr. McKay. You know, as we heard today, IFTA, IRP, those are the things that our folks pay. The department does a phenomenal job. They really are great about taking stakeholder input and figuring out how those things, and I'm happy to hear the questions from Assemblymember Anderson, and I'm happy to sit down and explain how that stuff works. It's actually a little arcane, but it's kind of fun how, you know, a truck that's not based here but traveling through here still pays its fair share of road usage taxes. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, please do connect, and we'll have a quiz later. Okay, seeing nobody else coming forward here in Carson City, seeing no one coming forward in Las Vegas, AVH, do we have anyone wishing to provide public comment by phone?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue.
Good morning, Chair Watts and members of the hardworking committee. This is Dora Martinez, DORA-MARTINEZ, and I represent the Nevada Disability Peer Coalition. I made it to your meeting late, but I got to hear a lot of good stuff that the DMV is doing. And as you all know, one of our, one of the questions that we voted for last year is required ID for everyone to vote. And so I'm here to give you all constructive feedback regarding the not so accessible website that the DMV have right now, and hopefully that this will put this in their mind. So when they are doing or creating another website that is accessible to all. And as you all know, I am blind. I do walk and I take the transit to go there, and I cannot drive. And so when it snows, we utilize the access with the website. And I did this last year, and I'm speaking from lived experience. I couldn't go to the DMV, and I had to cancel, and I couldn't cancel online, so I had to call, and I waited online on phone 2 hours because the person didn't know how to help a blind person who's on the call, which is weird. But I just want to put that on you guys' ear, and hopefully we can create accessibility in the beginning, so we don't come back and have to redo it again. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good one.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Martinez. And the DMV is here and listening, and so hopefully they will incorporate that as they continue to modernize their systems. AVH, next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are no additional callers to provide public comment at this time.
All right. Thank you all for your time and attention. This meeting's adjourned.